Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. I've got sad news to report that X, formerly Twitter, something's going on with that, so we won't be broadcasting live on that today, but we still are on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm grateful for everybody to be here. We're going to have a great discussion today because we're going to be talking about something that I used to know a lot about, and now I know nothing about, and that's children and teenagers and modern technology and phone use and all of that. We've got a great guest who is she's got a PhD, and she's been working with kids. She's got several books out. One is called Middle School. I love that title. Middle School Safety Goggles Required or Advised. And the phone book, which is her newest book, came out in August. And BFF or NRF, I have no idea what any of that means, but we're going to get into all of that and right now. So Jessica Speer is her name. And Jessica, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Oh, I am just full of questions because things have changed since I was a teenager, and when I was 10, it was 1967. That'll give you an idea how old I am. But so it's way different today. My kids, it was different than me. Now it's different for my kids are now parents, and so it's different for them as well because each generation, it seems like, and especially with technology today, it has really made it difficult, and I'm glad that you are out there. What made you want to tackle this topic, because it's hard, it's difficult, and there's lots of stuff about it.
Oh, good question. I really dove into this topic during the pandemic when we were all diving into our screens. So I am now the mom of a 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. And when the pandemic hit, my kids were, right in these preteen, early teen years. So we were just at that point where they're wanting their own phones. I was noticing what was happening with all of us and our devices, for connectivity during the pandemic. And as, a person with a background in social sciences, that made me really curious. And I was also, selfishly wondering, how can I manage this well with my own kids? So I dove into research, how can I best set kids up for success with phones, and started writing this book, using my own kids as guinea pigs, of course. And it came out just this past August. It's called The Phone Book: Stay Safe, Be Smart, and Make the World Better with a Powerful Device in Your Hand. And it's written for preteens because that is the age. At this point in time, that's the age kids are often getting their first connected cell phone, is sometime during those preteen years. So I wanted to put something in their hands to help them navigate, this new window to the world that they've got in their pocket.
And it is a big brand new world that
Hmm.
these kids have, and it takes a lot of responsibility on parents' parts and education so that we can do the right thing by them, and so we're not just giving them access to every little thing that's out there. We want to make sure that they are well schooled in that, and you talk about that a great deal in all of your books, and also about bullying and about friendship and just stuff like that, because it's I tell you, I would not want to be a teenager today. It's really tough. And by the way, congratulations on having a 16 and an 18-year-old, and you still survived.
Oh man, oh my kids are amazing. I'm so lucky. But you're so right. It's a hard time to be a teenager. You think about, back in the dark ages when you and I were, teens, life was pretty simple. I mean, we had the landline, we would see each other in school or maybe out at the mall, and that was it. Well, these days, kids are connected 24/7. A lot of teens have phones in their bedrooms at night. So they actually are often, Snapchatting or chatting with each other via direct messages throughout the whole night. So when school is over, it's actually just the social things are just beginning, but they're virtual, so it's very different. I find now that I'm the parent of teens, they actually spend quite a bit more time alone than we did as teenagers. That's we start hearing that there's a loneliness epidemic. I'm not surprised because I see a lot of kids spending a lot of time alone, although they're not really alone. They're on their phones and they're connected with their peers, but it definitely feels different. And it can be a really lonely time, spending so much time alone in your room on your phone, even though you're still connected, with your peers. It's very different from when we were growing up.
Boy, no kidding. We used to grab a stick and play army with it, or we'd go play baseball with a group of kids. And I don't see kids driving or riding around on bicycles like I used to, and stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids are spending time in the house looking at their phones. And how do we manage that?
This is hard, because I feel like it's been a monumental shift in how, the day-to-day activities of kids has happened in the last 10 years. It's been and the pandemic kind of shifted us forward many years too. It's hard, but I think parents can do a lot. Caregivers can do a lot by just what tone they're setting in their home. So how are they behaving with their phones? Are they still making time for everybody to just get out, go camping, go for a hike, go for a walk? It's kids, especially in the younger years, very much are following their role models, their parents. So parents can do a lot, to create the rhythm in their home, but it is very challenging. And I feel like this is one of the biggest challenges for parents right now, is trying to navigate, kids and screens at home, because it just happened so quickly, and we don't have a lot of the guardrails in place, publicly yet. So social media is not actually designed for kids, but millions of kids are on social media. So phones are designed to keep us looking at them, and kids too. So parents don't have a lot of help in this area. So a lot of this is falling on the shoulders of parents. So it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of conversations, and just intention to try to create a home that's not all about everybody staring at their devices.
My son have just bought a fifth wheel, and he's got a 10-year-old or 11-year-old stepdaughter now. And I said, "Well, that's good. So she's out and about, and she's, you guys are going camping and stuff." And he goes, "Yeah, she just sits in the camper and plays on her phone."
Yeah.
So how do you I mean, it's like that's what they do now. And it's
Yeah.
like, how do you get the kid out of the camper?
Okay, so this is what prompted, chapter one of my book, which is called Why Tech Companies Want You Staring at Your Screen. We have to let kids know, behind the curtain stuff going on with technology, that all these devices are developed with technology that's called persuasive design. So, and kids will, when we say what these things are, they'll go, "Oh, yeah, I get that." So, persuasive design are little things that keep us coming back to our phones, such as notifications and buzzes and dings and endless scrolls and streaks and tokens and things we're winning in games. So there's all these little tricks that these phones and apps are brilliantly designed with that keep us coming back. So I start by educating kids on, okay, let's talk about persuasive design. Let's talk about how algorithms work. And then let's talk about advertising. So I realized I jumped right into the deep end, but kids are smart. Kids are smart. So if we talk to them about, hey, this is how this works, and you're kind of a player in this. But you get to choose how you want to spend your time. So it takes a lot of conversation and some education, but I think starting with that, starting with awareness about how these amazing tools work, and they work in a way that keeps us, glued to them, starts to put some of the power back in the kids' hands.
And be careful if you're a teenager and you're listening to this. Be careful what you're um, um, carousing around the internet for, and looking for something to buy that may not be appropriate, because that's going to end up in your stream at one point, or it may end up in your family stream at one point. and so you've got to be really careful. it's it's crazy. It really is. But before I go too far, I got to ask you, because you said your 16 and 18-year-old are exceptional. Now you have a doctorate, so they my kids thought I was stupid when they were that age.
Well, and I have to correct you. I only have a master's degree, so I don't have a doctorate. I just have a master's. But yeah, my kids are. Yeah, they're really good. Believe it or not, they're really good at all this tech stuff. And I'm not going to give myself a pat on the back. I think it's again just they really understand how it works, but they all have their struggles, as do I. For instance, my oldest daughter, she has several times taken herself off TikTok, and she'll say, "Oh my gosh, this platform knows me so well that it sucks me in." So that takes some self-awareness on her part, that she realizes, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sucked in. I'm no longer doing things I want to be doing." So, on several occasions, in fact, she's on a TikTok break right now. She just has to log off. She just has to be like, "I'm done for a while. I need to take a break from this app just to get back to other things I do in my life." So, and that's a hard lesson, for parents to instill in their kids. And one way I do that is I'm really honest about, what I struggle with my phone. Like I used to read books at night before bed, and now I find myself, scrolling the news and reading the news. And so I share that with my kids. I'm like, gosh, I used to read books. I miss that. I need to really, stop getting sucked into the news feed right before bed. So we actually dialogue as a family all the time with, habits that we've created that we actually don't like with our devices. So making that open, making that acceptable, non-judgmental, that we're all trying to figure this out and find balance in our lives.
Now, I don't know if you do this or not, but some families will text each other from their rooms. Uh,
Gosh. Now, okay, so now here's the positive side of that. So sometimes if you have to have a difficult conversation, with a teen that's going to shut down, you a text might be a good way to have that conversation. Because so it does seem really weird. The teens may be upstairs in their bedroom and you're down here, but you know that the only way for this conversation to go down is by starting it via text. Not ideal, but sometimes, given this generation, it's a great way to start the conversation. So, just throwing that out there as sometimes that's okay, but also not ideal. It's great to do face-to-face conversations.
I'm my youngest son, who is so good. In school they tell them no cell phones in class, and it has to be off and stuff. He was so good at texting that he could have his phone be in his pocket and be able to text people.
Hmm.
And so I asked him one time, and I want to get your take on texting as well, but I asked him one time, how come you text and don't call people? And he said, because I can be talking to three different girls at the same time if I'm texting.
I love it. I love it. And that's a skill, to be texting from his pocket in school. And that opens up a whole new topic of devices in schools. And we are very much at the beginning of trying to figure this out as schools. I was reading a report recently that said teens get 237, text notifications often a day. So 237 a day. A quarter of those are during school hours. So that's a lot of buzzes in your pocket when you're supposed to be, listening to the hopefully really interesting science teacher at the front of the room. So this is a challenge. So our kids are even more distracted in a very distracted world in school. So this is a challenge for schools, and it's been interesting to see what's happening around the world. So what's happening in this country is very different than what's happening in other countries. So a lot of countries have actually just drawn a really clear line with no phones in schools. It's just not happening. But in this country, we tend to, we test out all sorts of scenarios, and then eventually maybe something rises to the top. Right now we're in that process. Everybody's testing out different approaches, and we're seeing what works best. But often it's the parents actually want to reach their kids too while they're in school. And there's often fear associated with school shootings in this country. So parents want to be able to access their kids in an emergency. So there's a lot going on, but it's clear to me that kids, even in school, are getting really distracted by their devices, even if it's just sitting in their back pocket buzzing. It's a distraction.
Indeed it is, but I'm an advocate of kids having phones because there have been times when my former wife, had apparently a memory problem, and because she would forget to pick the kids up from school sometimes, and so they had the phone, had the ability to call me, and then I would go get the kids,
Hmm.
or whatever the situation. If they need you for whatever reason, if there's something going on, or like the shooting. I wish I didn't have to ever say
I
that.
know, I know, I
Shootings in
know.
school and
It's
stuff like
terrible.
that. But I tell you, I'm glad that you've done this. What did you write these books because you were going through the teenage process with your own and thought that other people could benefit from this?
That's kind of what got me started. What that and and I also watched this documentary. I don't know if you've heard this documentary called The Social Dilemma, that shared a lot of these, behind the scenes, behind the curtain information about technology and social media platforms. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, you know, I'd love for kids to know this. I think this is really great information for kids to have, and that's what I do. I like to take these really difficult topics and write them in a way that preteens understand. So that to me was super intriguing. Can I share this complex information, such as persuasive design and algorithms and advertising and all the other stuff going on with devices? Can I share that in a way that is user friendly for preteens, and families? So that piqued my curiosity and got me started along this path. And it's been a fascinating journey. We're as a country and as a world, we're just right in the middle of trying to figure this out. How can we do this in a way that is really supportive of kids? And we're not there yet, but I'm glad there's a lot of people working on it and researching it and thinking about it. But we're not where I'd like to see us, as far as just having more guardrails in place to help kids, but also parents, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this falls on the shoulders of parents to try to navigate this for their kids.
It does. And before we get done today, I want to make sure that we give you time to give parents, when they're going to get that phone, or if they have an issue with the phone, to how they can address that with the kids to get the best outcome possible. Because it can be scary, especially since. Well, let me ask you, because I get on Facebook occasionally, not very often anymore, and it seems like everybody's got an idyllic life, except, of course, me. Everybody's got the best pictures up, and we're so happy, and we're a great big family, and we're doing this and we're doing that, and so they put that face forward, and then it's like I'm sitting in my room and nobody loves me, kind of
Yes.
kind of thing. So a lot of social media is not real. It is made up stuff, isn't it?
It is. It's people just showing the best parts of life. And this, and where this lands the hardest, I've found, and in the research shares, is often preteen girls. So if we think about, preteen girls are in the middle of all these changes in their life. Their bodies are changing, their brains are changing, their social world is often changing, and they're looking on Instagram and they're seeing just uh, things that are not even attainable, as far as body standards and beauty standards. And so there's been a real significant decline in the mental health of many preteen girls. And this is where those Facebook files, the Instagram issue that all came out in the news media, that Facebook and Instagram might have known behind the scenes that this was actually detrimental to this age group, but hasn't done anything about it yet. So just, yeah, just to be aware of that. It's, as adults, we can sometimes filter that, better than younger people, but very young people with developing self-esteem and developing brains and bodies, it's a little harder for them to manage. So it's another really important, conversation to have with our kids. In fact, I dive deep into FOMO, the fear of missing out, in the book. And so the fear of missing out is, like wanting all this stuff that they're seeing online, or these images, but also the fear of missing activities that are happening online. So they're afraid to log off because, these days, to stay in the know with your peers is often to stay up on what's happening on TikTok, or to know the latest memes that are trending. So there's a lot of pressure for kids to stay engaged, even to stay, culturally relevant with their peers.
By the way, we're talking with Jessica Speer. Go to jessicaspeer.com. You can look at all of her books. She's got a lot of stuff there. And one of the things, another thing, there's so much. We could spend a whole show just talking about how kids are talking today that I have no idea what they're saying, and stuff. So we could, I had a young man, and he was in his 20s, but he was putting in a furnace in my house, and he came and looked at my office and said, "Man, that's dope." And it's like, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" And he was like, "That's really dope." And I said, "Now, I remember dope, but it wasn't the same way that you seem to be remembering it." So we're going to have more with Jessica, and she's going to answer what the hell does dope mean right after this commercial message. So I hope you'll stay with us as you're listening to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And we got Jessica Speer here. She is a kid expert as far as technology and phones, and the troubles that they have between, like, these days, it can be as early as 8 or 9 when kids start, because for whatever reason, start to grow up, and getting through those next 10 years can be really hard. And everything that they're going through, I remember that part. Everything that they're going through is the first time that they've gone through it. So they don't really know how to handle it without help. Is that true?
I think it's really great if a parent can just walk side by side with kids, even though they're going to be way better at technology than we are, at a much younger age. But if they are walking side by side with us, and we're sharing what we're learning together, it starts to open that conversation. Because you're right, kids are getting connected devices at a younger and younger age. So it's important just to start talking about all this stuff really early. What to do if someone contacts you don't know, a stranger contacts you and starts asking you inappropriate questions, what to do if you witness some cyberbullying, what to do if, all these scenarios, just not in a threatening, scary way, but in just a real honest way, because that's the world today, since we're all communicating so much on these devices.
The sad part is that in a lot of cases, we have to, hold ourselves accountable because we're the ones that are setting the example.
Hmm.
I was going to a grocery store, and it was a warm day, so there were tables on the outside, and there was a mother and two preteens, probably 8 and probably 12, right around in there, and they all had ice cream. And so they'd gotten ice cream inside and came outside to sit to have their ice cream, and they're all looking at their phones.
Hmm.
They're not talking to one another. And I thought to myself, Ma, this is the perfect time when you could say, put the phones down and let's have a conversation. How was your day at school? How are your friends? Anybody getting bullied? A bunch of different things, and putting the phones down for a little bit. So we have only ourselves to blame at some points, don't we?
Yes, yes, and I love that because we see that all the time. But for the parents that are listening, we can just change on a dime. So we don't have to feel that if we've been doing that. We've kind of let screens and devices, overtake our family and our lives. That is not the end of the story. We at any point can just change the trajectory of all this, and it might start with a family conversation, just be like, hey, I've noticed that when we're together as a family, we're not even connecting. Let's talk about ways, to get back to maybe some of the things we used to do, and really engage your kids, and like, what did you guys like to do together as a family? How can we do this differently? And put together a family tech agreement. There's great examples online, and it's really kind of a guideline for the whole family. Like, how do we behave as a family and manage our devices in a way that keeps us connected as a family? So yeah, we can change that. And I, have always just been so aware of my own habits of what I'm doing. For instance, knowing that I now have my youngest is 16, but knowing she was approaching 16 for a very, very long time, I do not touch my phone in the car. I've got teenagers or preteens watching me. I don't touch my phone in the car. That's against the rules. And so in fact, as for driving along and something it's ringing, I'll even say to my daughter, "Hey, I think that's dad. Can you grab that for me?" But they never see me, taking my hands off the wheel and texting, because we are modeling all the time. And I know that's inconvenient and hard, but just think about, what are the qualities we want to instill in our kids, especially the safety ones, and how can we model those and talk about those in a really open way with our kids?
I can't imagine how badly I would feel if, because I was modeling a behavior like texting and driving, and my son or daughter who turned 16 and was able to drive, and they thought since I did it, it was okay, and then
Hmm.
they would get into a terrific accident or a horrific accident or something along those lines. I can't imagine how you would feel if that happened. And so it's very, your point is well taken, because they look at our children, whether you want to admit it or not, look at just about everything that we do,
Yeah.
and they model that behavior or they reject that behavior. But they know it's going on.
Yep, they are. It's more of what we're doing than even what we're saying. So our behavior
Yeah.
is very important as to how we're behaving and what we're doing.
It's terribly important. And the other thing that I would encourage everybody to do is, and this goes along with what Jessica talks about, when you get sit down to have dinner, turn the TV off, put the phones down, sit at the dining room table or the kitchen and have dinner together. And then that would be a great way to spend 30 minutes or 40 minutes talking about life and what's going on and stuff. And trust me, it'll be uncomfortable the first time you do it. But after a while, it will begin to be more comfortable, and it's a great way to connect to your kids.
Yeah.
Um, and I hope everybody takes that for what it's worth. But it can really change the direction of your relationship with your kids.
Yeah, and in our family, the dinner table is the place that we've always connected. So that's been a long-standing rule in our family, is no devices at tables, and we try to make it fun. So when my kids were younger, we'd always come with some fun question that everybody had to ask, around the table. So some way to engage, but then also learn about each other. So if it sounds like, I'm so used to just scrolling, while I'm eating dinner, think of some other way that actually might bring some joy and connection to your dinner table, because that's there's been so many studies that show that families that dine together and actually talk with each other show amazing outcomes. Those kids show amazing outcomes, academically, as drug prevention. They aren't the teens that are getting pregnant. So those little connections over the dinner table are so important. So if possible, make it that a family rule. Devices are away during dinner, and this is our time to connect with each other.
It's also a good way to find out some of the things that are going on in their lives that you wouldn't otherwise know.
Exactly.
And you can give them the benefit of your limited expertise, because things are so different now than they used to be. I remember getting bullied and bullying at times, and it was, at least it was face to face. Now you can get bullied and not even know who the hell it is who's bullying you.
Mhm, mhm, and we often might not know as parents, that we might not know this is happening because we're not seeing what's happening on the screen. So it's great for kids to have an understanding what actually is cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is any harassment or threats that are happening over the internet. It used to be, so when it was, the traditional bullying, it would be three things. It would be, it's repeated, it's harmful behavior, and it's directed usually at someone who has a hard time defending themselves. So that was the definition of bullying. It's repeated, harmful, intentional behavior at somebody who has less power. But when we shift that online, the power dynamic doesn't matter anymore, because, like you said, we might not even know who's doing this. So it's kind of leveled the playing field with bullying, and it's a lot harder to stop because it can happen behind the scenes. It can happen on an app where things disappear, on anonymous apps. So there's apps you can actually share things without even saying who you are, and that's a place where is a breeding ground for bullying. So talking to kids about that and what to do, and the most important thing to do is to let somebody know that it's happening. I think we see a lot of tragedies happen because kids are not sharing that this is happening to them. So they need to be able to share that this is happening to them. It's great to screenshot that. So if there's some really mean text happening, screenshot those, save those as evidence, and then find a trusting adult that can help and navigate that situation in a way that feels safe to the target. Because sometimes targets are afraid to even bring it up because they're afraid it might get worse. So it has to be handled really carefully by somebody that knows what they're doing.
Now, we need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to ask you, in your opinion, is it a good idea or less than a good idea to take your kid's phone and go through it, and either with their permission or without their permission? We need to take this quick break. We'll be back in 1 minute and 10 seconds, so don't go away.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got Jessica Speer here. I am learning a lot, and I'm going to learn even more when we start talking about what do these acronyms mean and stuff, because I don't have any idea. But Jessica, I know parents mean well, and they're thinking in terms of it being, it's quote unquote in the best interest of the child. But to take somebody's phone and then go through it and then use it against them, or to use it in a less than positive way, what's your feeling about that, all that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. And you're going to hear different opinions on this, but here's mine. So my thought is, when kids are just brand new phone users, so we're talking preteens, maybe in the 10 to 13 year range, what I think is a good idea is, in your tech agreement, in your family tech agreement, you say, for these first couple years, as you're building skills and building responsibilities, we as your parents have the right to check things to make sure it's going okay. And then, once they get past that period and they've proven their responsibility and they're now teenagers, my personal thought is it is getting to be a little invasion of privacy. It's like someone reading your diary or someone listening in on your phone calls. But I think it's perfectly fine as they're younger to do that as their parents, and that can, so, and sometimes just by doing that, it can make them think about, what am I posting, how am I responding to that text, what am I saying? Because we want to teach kids that pause before we post, or pause before we share, and think about what we're actually putting out there for the world to see. So that's my take. maybe start there, but then we move out of that role. But it is important to always just see how our kids are doing. If we notice later in the teen years that our kids seem to be really struggling, it is time to check back in. Don't go right to their device, but talk to them. Talk to them about, hey, I see you're struggling. It looks like you're having a tough time. Can we talk about that? I'm worried about you. I want to be here to support you. So I would open that conversation back up, with your teen if you are seeing them struggling.
I love the idea of when you give somebody a phone, a contract comes along with it or an
Mhm.
agreement. This is how we're going to treat this device, and we're going to take care of, make sure that you know how to use it, and all the things that are involved with it. So I think and that you said that they can pick some of those up online.
There's a ton out there. And you'll notice if you just search family tech agreement, you'll get a ton. And I would read through a few and see which feels like a fit for your family. I found one, but then I also made some edits to it because, some of it didn't feel quite like, a fit for our family. So take a look at those and then talk through it as a family. Make sure everybody's really clear, because once you have some boundaries and some guideline in place, you have a leg to stand on when things go wrong. So if nothing's in place and then things go really wrong, they stop doing homework or they're on their device all the time, you can go back to that agreement and be like, hey, remember in this agreement we talked about phones go away at this time? And so it just gives you some places to start and open that discussion.
One of the things that I think that really needs a lot of discussion are selfies, and selfies that may be, um, oh, how do you say it?
Risque.
Risque, or scantily clad, or something designed to impress a new boyfriend or something along those lines. And you think when you're 15, I know I was there. You think that the person that you're dating, you're going to love forever, and you're going to get married, and you're going to have kids, and and so it's okay to do that kind of thing because they're my forever. What do you call that? A BF, BB, BB? What do you? I don't know. Your boy.
BFF. BFF.
Only if BFF isn't that best female friend?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so
Best friends forever. Best friends forever.
what do you call your boyfriend? Do
Oh,
they have one for that?
it would just be your boyfriend
Oh, okay.
or someone you're
But
dating.
but what do you do? What do you, I mean, because those sorts of things, they get out there and they'll never come back.
Yeah, and you're right. They're not thinking through. Of course, they're not thinking this through because their prefrontal cortex in their brain isn't fully developed. And so the last part of our brain to fully form is the front, which is the prefrontal cortex, and that's where we have our self-regulation and self-control and critical thinking. And so, of course, a 12 or 13-year-old isn't maybe thinking that through. That part of our brain doesn't even fully develop until mid 20s. So it makes sense that, mistakes are made. So this is another area of conversation. In fact, I've got a story in my book about this because I've been to many middle schools and I haven't found one yet that has not had a situation where a young student shared a photo of herself that she wanted to keep private. It was only for this one person, and that person shared it with all their friends. And it was had really, tragic effects for her personally. So there's a story in my book about that because I think it's really important for kids to see that actually happens quite a lot, and it's a tough situation for that often a girl to recover from that situation, especially in middle school. So talk about that with your kids, and share that story with your kids, and mistakes are going to be made, because they're young people and they're impulsive and their self control is not yet in place. But it is important just to again keep that conversation going, not in a shaming critical way, but sharing, hey, this is a thing and this happens. Or if you hear a story, that's how I like to often bring up conversations with my kids is I'll see something in the paper or I'll see something on TV. I'm like, oh my gosh, I saw this. Are you seeing that happen at school? What's your experience with this? So I think coming at this from a place of curiosity is the great way to start. That they know that we are old and we don't totally understand what's happening in their world. So if we come to them, not from judgment, but from like, hey, tell me about this. I read this story. What is that like? Is this happening at your school? So it's a great way to just talk about some of these things that are hard to bring up sometimes.
Indeed, and I will tell you that um, if you're the father of a 15-year-old girl, you're very, very well aware of what goes through the mind of a 15-year-old boy because you were that at one point in time way back when. And it's like a 15-year-old boy is just liable to say, "Oh yeah, I'll show you how cool I am. Look at her." And
Hmm.
and he might not even be thinking that it's going to be go viral, but it's one of those things so the kids need to know what other kids are liable to do to them at the same time, I would guess.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it becomes more normative in the upper teen years. However, I would say most girls wish the guys wouldn't ask. Like, there's a lot of pressure for especially teenage girls to post things. They wish the guys wouldn't ask. And if anybody's really interested in this subject, there's a great book by some researchers called Behind Their Screens, and they talked to like 1,000 teens in writing this book as to what's really happening with teens behind their screens. And that was a big takeaway from reading that research in that book is, it becomes more normative in the upper teen years, but the consistency is girls wish they weren't asked for these things. They wish they weren't being put in this position to have to decide to do this or not.
Boy, I tell you, the differences between boys now and boys when I was growing up, I would no more think to ask for. In those days it would be a Polaroid. I should say, here, give me a Polaroid of you being naked, and that would I would not survive that conversation. She would kill me, and then she would throw me out the door, and that would be the last I'd ever see her. But kids today are a lot more brazen. Everybody does it. It's okay. And nobody will see it. It'll just be me, and it means that you love me. Is that
Hmm.
kind of what they say?
Oh, absolutely, and that's the exact words I used in my story in my book is that, that the boy said, "If you really liked me, you would do this," so it comes across that, "If you really liked me, you would do this." Yeah, so note to all the girls out there, don't fall for that. Don't fall for that line, so let's talk about that openly so everybody's really aware that we shouldn't be falling for that line.
And moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas, and if you've got a young person near you, just conversation. It seems to me, and Jessica, it seems to me that conversation today is far more important than it has ever been.
Mhm. It is. It's really important. And again, just in an open, curious, respectful way. I think when a lot of parents come at this, where it becomes always really confrontational. So your kids or teen doesn't want to talk to you at all about tech or devices because every time it comes up, it turns into like a fighting match. So really think carefully about how you're coming to these conversations, because we want to make them as safe and comfortable as we can for the kids so they do want to talk through these things with us, because there's a lot of tough stuff they're navigating. I mean, we think about, when we were teens navigating group dynamics, you change that to a group text and adds a whole nother layer of complexity. So they're navigating some really tough stuff. So it's wonderful if they actually do have, a trusted adult by their side that they feel comfortable saying, hey, I don't know what to do. Somebody just got kicked out of this group chat. So they actually they would come to you maybe to talk about these things, and we might not know the best answer for them, but at least we can listen and validate how difficult that is, and acknowledge some of the challenges of the social dynamics they have to face living a lot of their social world online.
You said earlier, and I want to revisit this briefly. You said that the typical kid will get 200 texts a day.
Hmm. 237. That's the average. Notifications or text. So it might not be text. It might be, snaps from Snapchat or little DMs on Instagram, or, or a notification that they've been tagged in a photo on another app. So about 237 on average notifications a day. That's a lot, huh? That's a lot of notifications to look at.
How do they keep it all straight?
Well, and so here's what I've learned from teens is, especially the teens that are really active. Not everybody's getting that. Some are getting way more, some are getting way less, depending on, how into their devices they are. But those that are very engaged and getting a lot, I call it digital stress. And they'll tell you this too, that it's actually hard to keep up. So it's hard to keep the Snapchat streaks going. It's hard to respond, to all the posts of your friends that, girls do a really nice job of really, saying nice things. When somebody puts themselves out there and posts something about themselves, girls I found are very supportive of each other, which is really nice. But there's also a pressure to make sure you're seeing that and you're responding. So there, I call it digital stress, the need to keep up with all this stuff that's happening online, and it can feel overwhelming at times. I've heard stories that, some kids they're called streaks on Snapchat, and that means every single day these two students have been sending a snap photo of each other, and the app counts your streaks. So sometimes it might be 97 days these two kids have had this streak. Okay, so back to the beginning of this call, that is a persuasive design technique. What a beautiful way to keep, people coming back to your app, because now they feel compelled to keep this streak. But one of the students has a camping trip, and they actually have to go offline. Some students have actually given their phone to somebody else because, like, hey, you have to keep this streak up for me. I mean, there's a lot of pressure to keep up with all this, So, and I don't want to paint a negative picture. There's really, positive things happening too, but there's a lot of stuff that can be overwhelming for kids and teens happening is online too.
Well, and it turns out that the bottom line is they've developed this structure so that the more you click, the more money they make, the more they can
Yeah.
charge advertisers. So at the end of the day, it's all about the money. And even Zuckerberg or some of the other guys, they don't seem to have the empathy for what's going on with kids, if it will influence their algorithm, which they do not share, by the way. So you never are really quite sure what the algorithm is, and then they can change it at any time
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's a hard place to negotiate through.
Well, and so this is where, okay, so the platforms are not policing themselves. We've come to to agreement with that. So now things are bubbling up. So in several places, including Europe and California, they both just introduced some laws that it's called age appropriate design code. So, and that means, we have to think through what is the age of the people that we're designing some of these things for. And the hope is to alleviate, some of these addictive sort of qualities of some of these apps. Some regulations are requiring how the algorithms work. Of course, before any of these become working law, they go through a ton of lawsuits and things that slow them down. But these sort of efforts are bubbling up everywhere. So I'm hopeful. I am hopeful that at some point, we're going to have a way better way of managing this. So my hope is that there are more guardrails for kids, because I know we can do better. I know we can do this better, to safeguard kids.
I agree with you, and I hope that some of those things get through, because if we and we need to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to ask you about this. If we lose one more child to suicide because of a damn phone, I think that we as a people need to really reconsider what we're doing. So we're talking to Jessica Speer, and she's written 3 books. Is it 3, right?
Right. Yep.
And go to jessicaspeer.com. She's got lots of insights into the mind of a 15-year-old, which I can't even imagine these days. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. It's just 30 seconds. Just hold on. We'll be right back.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. You know, we've had three public service announcements. One is be a good dad. And the other one is we've got homeless kids that we need to take care of. And the other one is be nice to older people and don't steal from them. I think those are all pretty good messages. What do you think?
Those are great messages. I love it.
So, not to bring us down to a great degree, but there's one aspect of phone use, and I don't have any idea really. I've heard of it, but I don't know how rampant it is. Kids feeling like they have nothing to live for anymore because of their phone or because of their bullying or that happens and stuff. Is that as prevalent as I've heard, or is that kind of an outlier?
Well, right now in this day and age, we are seeing a lot more anxiety and depression in teens, and a higher suicide rate. And there's a lot of debate as to the cause for that. Some people feel like these digital devices are absolutely contributing. Some people would argue otherwise. But what I did learn when I was researching this book is I sat through a lot of the Senate committee testimony that is trying to push some of these regulations through.
Well,
And
you
those
did
were
do a lot of research. That
I know, and it was heartbreaking. So the people that come to testify are the heartbreaking stories that should never have happened. The kids that took their own life because they were being bullied online, or somebody that actually did something that harmed themselves because they saw other people doing it on TikTok. So those stories were heartbreaking. Luckily it's the minority. It's just a small, but any percentage is not okay. And this is where I feel like we could really do a lot better. I think one of the challenges is, again, there's not a lot of, right now, tech is an industry that's not really regulated in this regard. So there's a lot of improvements we can do to make sure that there are some safeguards in place that really protect kids. And that's all the parents that were there testifying are fighting for that. And a lot of organizations are too. It's taking a long time to get any meaningful guardrails in place. So I'm hopeful that those will happen at some point. That'll make things safer, but it's going to take a while. I just feel like there's so many places where we could plug some corks to stop the leaks. That it's going to take a while. So this is why it's extra important, just to keep talking about it at home. And one of the best things we can do is to make sure that the kids in our care feel really loved and connected by us.
you just said, I think the most important aspect of all of this is parents being involved, being communicative, and being aware of what's going on with their kids and becoming their best advocate rather than being judgmental and stuff. Get inside with your kid, treat them like they're your treat your kids like they're really your own. And what I mean by that is times were different a long time ago. We have no earthly idea what these kids are going through, but you need to get involved. You need to get deeply involved with them and show them the love, kindness, that home is an absolute safe place, and you're going to protect them at all costs, and that you will defend them at all costs when that such situation comes up, so that they will have the intestinal fortitude or the guts to come to you, and to know that you'll handle it correctly with
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, which takes, building some trust. So we have to make sure our kids trust us so they know that if they come to us, we're not going to completely freak out and lose it because, then they're not going to come to us anymore. So when our kid actually is taking a risk and coming to us with something they're struggling with, we have to handle that so carefully. We have to just settle ourselves, find empathy, listen to them, help them feel heard and validated. So that takes a lot of, just groundedness as a parent, because sometimes they might come to us with something that is really upsetting and difficult for us to hear. But if we can be that safe place, be that sounding board, so they know that they can come to us with this tough stuff, and it's going to be okay. That we are their ally, and keep reminding them of that over the years. Keep reminding them that you are there for them. You definitely don't know everything, but you want them to know that you are their number one supporter, that you've got their back, and that they can come to you with tough stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the tough stuff can be rather triggering, which
Mhm.
it's like if you pick up your kid's phone and you find that in the favorites is an adult website, and your first response is, "Wait till that wait, you can't treat it that way because you're not going to stop it. But what you can do is educate your kid, at least from my perspective, educate them on why it's not appropriate, and that that will come in time, but that now is not an appropriate time for you to be looking at stuff like that, and and then see if you can block it from them. But anyway, but how would you handle that?
That's a tough one, and it comes up really common. So just so everybody's aware, the average age kids stumble upon, and it's usually accidental. The average age they stumble upon porn is somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. And this is nothing like, the Playboy magazine that was hidden out in the alley that you might have seen when you were growing up. This is sometimes violent, non-consensual, very explicit, not what you would want, your 10, 11, 12-year-old to see. So one way I would tackle that, again, we don't want to trigger any shame here. I would say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told me." So that is often our opening line. "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told me. I'm sorry you stumbled upon that. That's content that is not really meant for your eyes. I bet you that was really disturbing to see that, or I bet you that made you feel a little weird watching that." So I'm trying to get away from shaming them, making them feel bad because it might have been accidental, or it might have been somebody showing them something because they thought it would be funny to see their reaction. So just again watching that your reaction, and then having a good conversation about it. I always love to go to books. And so on that topic, there's a great book out there for that age group that is called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And it, in a beautiful way, kind of talks about, there's stuff out there, and some of this stuff is not meant for, eyes that are your age. And it talks about that in a way that's really age appropriate. So that would be my next go-to is to maybe get that book and talk, have them read it and then talk about it together. But again, trying to avoid shame, because as soon as we bring shame into that conversation, they're not going to come to us again. When the next thing they stumble upon is as big as that.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures.
That's easy to remember, folks. Good pictures, bad pictures. I should recommend that you get that book if you've got teenagers around. If you've got young kids, get that book because you need to be armed, and information is your armor that's going to be able to help get through some of this stuff because it can be tough. Miss Spear, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you, Kevin. Thank you so much for the conversation. I loved chatting with you about all this tricky stuff that parents are dealing with today.
Oh, there's so much more. There's so much more that I'd love to have you back. Will you come back?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, let's dive deeper into all this.
Exactly. JessicaSpeer.com is where you go. She's got 3 great books that are tailored for parents and teenagers negotiating the difficult teen years. It was tough when I was growing up. I can't imagine what it's like today. So, Jessica, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Oh no, I think you did a beautiful job of summarizing. My books actually are more geared towards preteens and early teens. So don't hesitate if you've got anyone from the age of like 8 to 13, 14. I feel like that is the perfect window to really start talking about this stuff, and they're written in age appropriate ways and open great conversation for kids and families. So everybody feels more prepared as we're navigating this digital world.
And it's only going to get worse with AI and everything else. So it's going to be a challenge. So thank you, Jessica. It's been a great pleasure having you here. And I'm looking forward to the next time you come.
Me too, Kevin.
So you stay right there. I'll be right back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at KM.